Okay, guys, I know I haven't had a chance to talk to you guys about this unit, and I actually hate it because this unit has a lot of interesting things in it that I think you would find interesting. So I'm going to try and go through an overview of the unit to help you for the test, and just so you can kind of see this. So I would highly recommend you kind of listen to this. I'm going to try and be as quick as possible, but there is a lot of things to talk about. All right, so. All right, first thing that we had happen is the situation with Cuba. Cuba is taken over by a guy named Fidel Castro. And funny story, Castro at first doesn't know what type of government he wants to have. He doesn't know if he wants to have a democracy or communistic government, because those are really the two big governments at the time. And we kind of make him mad, so he chooses communism. Well, as you can see by the artwork on the imagery on to the right, the problem with him becoming communistic is that we're worried that the Soviet Union will use this as a launching area for any kind of offensive or any kind of wartime activities that they would want to do against us. And if you're not sure where Cuba is about 90 miles off the coast of Florida. So it's almost like a part of the U.S. It's so close. And so we became really worried about that. So Castro leads a revolution, gains control, allies himself with the Soviet Union, and ever since after World War II, we've had this policy of containment where we're trying to stop the spread of communism, not destroy communism, but stop the spread. And so we feel like Cuba turning to communism is definitely a threat, not only to the America directly, but it's also just a threat of communism spreading farther and farther all over the world. So we get some Cuban, they're called exiles, but they're freedom fighters. They're people that don't want to be led by Castro and don't want to be led by communism. So we actually help train them and supply them with arms and kind of help plan their revolution against Castro. Well, it fails, and Castro finds out that we actually helped the exiles train and prepare for the revolution. So any kind of relationship that we had with him is instantly gone. So now we have a communist island right off the coast of Florida that now knows that we tried to plan a revolution and kill him. So here's a video. I'm going to put this online so you can watch. I have a bunch of video clips, and I think it shows you one of the overall themes of this unit is the power of the television. Okay, so you need to see what the Americans saw on their television, because that kind of swayed their way of thinking and their point of view on everything back then. So please do look at some of the clips, or all the clips really, that I have on here. All right, so he's mad at us. So the Soviet Union and him work out an agreement where they actually start bringing missile equipment and building portable missile silos into Cuba. And as you can see by these maps, you can see why the United States is worried, because if the Soviet Union puts missiles in Cuba, basically there's nowhere safe in America from the threat of a nuclear warhead exploding. So when I say that fear was rising in America, it was crazy how afraid people were of the next possible world war. So Soviet Union builds missile silos. We see them doing it with American spy planes, and John F. Kennedy comes on and he says that this is a threat to our society. We're not going to stand for it. So he creates a blockade of ships that surrounds Cuba, and he told the Soviet Union that any Soviet ship that breaks the blockade it would be seen as an act of war. And there's a time where Soviet ships are heading directly toward the blockade, and people in America were 100% sure that we were about to go to World War III. And not only was it World War III, but it was nuclear World War III. So everybody was terrified. Well, at the last second, the Soviets don't go through the blockade. They turn around, and then they said, okay, we'll make a deal with you. And this is important. This will be on your test. The Soviets said, fine, we'll take our missiles out of Cuba, which is really close to you, if you remove missiles that we know that you have based in Turkey, which is very close to us. I'm kind of like the exact same thing. So we agree. And really, Mr. Roper, what's the big deal about the Cuban Missile Crisis? This is probably the closest we've ever been to World War III. That moment when the Soviet ships were headed toward our blockade, if they try and push through, we're at war with the Soviet Union. So you have to understand the terror and the fear of the American people, thinking that a nuclear warhead could be launched at them at any second. Here's a video about the missile crisis, and I think I've got Duck and Cover in here too. You'll want to see Duck and Cover. It's really interesting. All right, so another instance where we come into conflict, not directly with the Soviet Union, but indirectly, is Vietnam. Vietnam, you have the northern part of Vietnam that's supported by communist countries, mainly China, and then Russia becomes a little involved, and then you have South Vietnam, who is in danger of becoming absorbed by North Vietnam, and suddenly the country would be a communist country. So we feel it's important to prop them up. So we send support there. We've got a couple of warships there, and we're there in a quote-unquote support role, okay? So we have 2 destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin, and then they radio that the Viet Cong, North Vietnamese forces have fired on them. Honestly, they probably didn't have any weaponry that could do anything to the ships. But President Johnson at the time gives permission he goes to Congress, and they give him permission to increase military presence in Indochina. That's all it was. It was, okay, we're getting 2 ships fired on. We give you permission to send support if our ships are under attack. That's kind of what they said. And it turns into the Vietnam War. So you have to understand, something so small like the Gulf of Tonkin incident turns into really our worst war that we've ever been. So when they pass the resolution, they give him authority to take any measures he believes are necessary. And instead of pulling the ships out or just adding some more support, we start sending troops over, and we institute the draft. The draft, if you're not sure what it is, it's where it's not being used right now. It could be at any time, but that's where you don't volunteer to serve in the military. You are mandatory required to serve in the military. So they started drafting soldiers, and suddenly 2 ships getting fired on turns into be thousands and thousands of American soldiers in South Vietnam fighting back the communists. All right, so you've got South and North Vietnam. The North Vietnamese, remember, South Democratic, North Communist. They started calling all northern Vietnamese soldiers the Viet Cong. Sometimes you'll hear them in movies call them the VC. So the VC is trying to get us out of South Vietnam. They want America to feel like it's hopeless for them to be there. They don't want us to have any hope of saving South Vietnam. So they hold what's called the Tet Offensive. And I'll show you a map on the next one. This is basically, if you see here, here's the line between North and South. Well, the Northern comes down what's called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and they ambush all these different areas all at the exact same time. All these arrows you see are North Vietnamese attacks on different parts of South Vietnam. It's totally by surprise, and it's very devastating, and by the end of it, South Vietnam stops being all the way up here, and it basically becomes a little patch of land down here. They almost completely take over all of Vietnam, hoping that the United States would say, okay, we're done with this. We have no desire to sit over here and fight a war like this. Well, unfortunately for them, the Tet Offensive didn't work, and it just made us even commit more soldiers to stop them from doing this. So this is where the war really escalates. I have some videos here on it. You'll like this too. It'll show you conditions that the soldiers fought in. It'll talk about. It'll show. I think I've got one on that's an interview with a soldier. I've got one that's a news clip. You have to remember, people back then didn't have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They had the television. Period. They had the TV. So at night, families would be hugged around the television wanting to see what's going on in the world. And then suddenly you have a CBS newscast of a reporter that's following a squad in Vietnam on a scouting mission. And that's one of these videos. And you get to see what the life of a soldier's like live. So it's a different time, and you can see why the television is so powerful. All right, so let's talk about JFK. I think all of you know that JFK was assassinated. He was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald, and this is the whole magic bullet theory that one bullet killed not only him but severely injured Senator Connally. So after JFK's death, you see over to the right, Lyndon B. Johnson gets sworn in as the new President of the United States. I was kind of talking about this in class today with my 8th. One of the things that really draws people out and really comes up with this conspiracy theory about JFK is, if you look over here, this is Lee Harvey Oswald. He's been arrested, and he's being transported from the police station to be given to federal authorities, and they're going to do some intense questioning. Well, this guy right here is a guy named Jack Ruby, and I guess the best description I can give you for him is he's a gangster, okay? So you can probably just make out here, this is a gun. He's had a pistol in his hand. So while they're transporting him, back then security was way different, and there's a live television feed of this. There's live footage of this because that's what they did back then. They played footage and they wanted to show you what was going on. So Harvey Oswald's getting transported, and Jack Ruby, a known gambler, gangster, not a good dude, walks up and shoots him in the midsection and kills him. So he never gets to go and be questioned. That's probably the biggest thing that happens that has started everybody on the JFK conspiracy theory. If you're a conspiracy theorist that does not think he did it or thinks that he wasn't alone, people usually go right back to Jack Ruby. And why would a gangster shoot the man that just shot the president unless he was just a real big fan of JFK? All right, here's a video that you can watch for that will help. So he was assassinated in Dallas, and what you need to realize is it showed Americans how strong our government was, because the president is killed and then our government just continued to move. The vice president gets sworn in, and it's almost like we didn't miss a beat. But this gives LBJ, Lyndon Johnson, now that he's president, he has the power to actually push through some things that he was very passionate about. The biggest thing being what is called, and there's multiple questions on this, make sure you look over this stuff. This is called LBJ's Great Society. And these are